Okay, so we're in the Wayback Machine and we're now looking at 98-99. That's why I'm wearing this. I loved this look for the LA Kings. I do not understand to this day why they looked at this jersey and went, let's make it bland. And then when they had this on the front, which was fine, which is a really nice look too, then they went, we can go blander. Anyhow, that aside, let's take a look at the 98-99 season. Let's start with the top 10 according to the Hockey News from that year. Jaromir Jagr at number 1, Peter Forsberg at number 2, Dominik Hasek at number 3, Eric Lindros at number 4, Paul Kariya at number 5, Mike Modano at number 6, Nick Lidstrom at number 7, Chris Pronger at number 8, Teemu Selanne at number 9, Pavel Bure at number 10. This is why Lindros is in the Hall of Fame. I've said it before. He was top 10 in the league for a long time, according to a lot of people. Do I think he was overrated? At times, yes. Underrated? At times as well. Which is what happens with a lot of players, and we're still seeing that now, where I look and I say, this player's probably overrated because of their name, and this player doesn't get attention because they're not a name. So people go, well, who the hell's that? So there's a lot of that goes on. It's always gone on in hockey, and it's an argument I've been having going all the way back to the 80s. The difference is now I have 114,000 plus subscribers who have their varying opinions, and it's a little different than talking to a few guys at work. But either way, it's the same sort of dynamic, and we'll get through it. There was also a 6-page article in that annual on eye protection. So we're looking in 1999 at players with eye injuries, players losing their eyes, and the talk of needing visors. Now we're 20 years later, and visors are fine and fantastic, but guys are tilting them up, and the actual eye protection, I would say, is still lacking in the game 20 years later. And it said in that article as well, you can't just let the players police themselves, because in general they won't. And Eric Lindros is quoted in that article saying, yeah, it's probably stupid that we're not wearing visors, but I don't wear one. Okay. That's great logic. Yeah, I should probably put on this seatbelt, but I don't feel like it. And then they mandate it, and they make it so it's illegal not to wear one, and then it's, So the NHL would have to mandate visors at some point. The Atlanta Thrashers joined the NHL, and how do they start it? By drafting Patrick Stefan and deciding that Damian Rhodes is going to be their starter. Both of these decisions, not great. It was a bad draft year. They would have been better off keeping the number one draft pick rather than moving it. They had it briefly, and then they moved it to Vancouver and try to get one of the Sedins. Basically, Brian Burke walked into that draft and said, I'm leaving with both Sedins, and I will punch anybody in the face who tries to stop me. At least that seems to be the gist of it, and it worked. Take him. Just take him. Boston finishes with a record of 39, 30, and 13 for the second year in a row. And the interesting thing about this, too, is that Raymond Bourque, who's 38 years of age that year, scores 57 points. He's still the horse on that blue line. He's fantastic. And he is the only reason that Boston at this point is a playoff team. This is a team that there were a lot of reasons to look at the Bruins in 99 and say, yeah, you've got Joe Thornton who's coming up. He got 41 points, which was better than his rookie total. And you've got Samsonov there, and you've got a lot of good things going on. But there was still some belief that, at least to me, I believe that Boston was probably overachieving a little bit. Pat Burns was getting the best out of them, absolutely. Buffalo, they're Stanley Cup finalists. We're not going to get into those finals today because we've talked about it. So I'm going to be nice. Dominik Hasek wins his 5th Vezina in 6 years. He doesn't get the Hart or the Pearson Awards that year, but that's okay. He finishes with a goals against of 1.87 and a save percentage of .937. And this is why Hasek, to me, is one of the top 2 greatest goalies I ever saw. Patrick Roy, number 1. Dominik Hasek, number 2. That's just how I see it. And Hasek, it was insane how good he was for Buffalo. And for how long? Remember, 5 Vezina trophies in 6 seasons. Every year at the end of the year, they go, yeah, so he's still the best. Yep, he's the best. And without him, Buffalo doesn't get to the finals. I would argue they don't get to the playoffs in a lot of those seasons without him in net. Carolina, they win the Southeast Division with 86 points, which is less points than third-place teams in other Eastern divisions, which leads to a lot of complaining. There is a ton of complaining from fans, from media, about the fact that this is a team that's won their division. It's their first time in the playoffs in Carolina. But 86 points, they're a mediocre team at best. So the discussion of just how weak the Southeast Division is real. You've got this division with Washington, with Tampa, Atlanta's joining it, and Florida, and it's a mediocre division. Absolutely terrible division. And so that's going to be a discussion for the next few videos, I would think. The Chicago Blackhawks dropped from 18th in the league to 21st, so adding Dougie Gilmour did not have the effect that was expected. 16 goals and 56 points for a Dougie Gilmour, who is no longer a force in the NHL. His days of 100 and some points, his days of 90 points are over. Jocelyn Thibault was also brought in during that season as the starter. Yeah, Montreal decided to move on from Thibault. I still don't understand that. That's one of those ones that when it happened, I'm like, seriously? So now Jocelyn Thibault goes to a team in Chicago that's not great, and Thibault is going to play pretty well for them. The Detroit Red Wings, they lose, and they lose their chance at being officially recognized as a dynasty in 1999. That would have been their third straight Stanley Cup. But they lose in round 2 against the Avs. And they had finished the season with 19 wins and 7 losses. So they steamroll into the playoffs. They swept the Ducks in round 1. They win the first 2 playoff games against Colorado. And then they lose 4 in a row. So for Detroit, it had been a great season. It looked like they were going to do something fantastic. And then they failed in the end against Colorado. Another Colorado-Detroit matchup. Edmonton, they lose in triple overtime versus Dallas in round 1. So again, Edmonton's middling. They're not wanting to spend money, but they're still in the playoffs. So while their record is they're still in the playoffs, and there's still hope that this team, this good young team, could put it all together. And Bill Guerin is leading them at this point. So there's goals there. There's some good goaltending. There's some good things going on in Edmonton, but they're not going to reach that next level. The Florida Panthers actually improved that year. They finished 17th overall in the NHL, but they do fall short of the playoffs. So 16 teams make it. They're 17th overall. And they trade for Pavel Bure during the year. The idea being we need more goals. Remember I said, they're going to go for more offense. They went all in. They decided to go for Bure, including Jovanovski in that deal. Will bite them eventually, but not yet. Because Bure is very glad to be out of Vancouver. And immediately upon arriving in Florida, he rediscovers a scoring touch that had been wavering in Vancouver because he was miserable there. The LA Kings, Luc Robitaille returns to the team and gets 39 goals in his return to LA. Played better in LA than anywhere else. The team, however, finishes 22nd overall. So, yes, he's back, but they're back out of the playoffs. And then in the offseason, realizing they needed some more oomph up front, they add Ziggy Palffy. He will add some oomph. And so for the Kings, there's some optimism here. And what they traded to get Palffy at the time looks like it's probably not enough for Ziggy Palffy. And then it turns out that it's not enough. Montreal, they missed the playoffs. So after an iffy start, they trade out Thibault. And they bring in Jeff Hackett as the starter. And I mentioned this with Chicago, and I'll mention it again. Hackett puts up great numbers. Great goalie. But if he goes to a team, they're not going to be very good. And it is such a strange, bizarre phenomena that takes place. But Hackett's pattern is really found here. It starts in Chicago and it continues into Montreal. Good stats, good goaltender. The team, however, short of the playoffs. The Nashville Predators are 24th in 27, out of 27 teams, I should say, in the National Hockey League. So they finish ahead of 3 teams in their first year. They are not the worst team in the league. And it's because they are a hardworking blue-collar team. And they get that underdog reputation right out of the gate. Barry Trotz coaches them that way. There's no big superstar here, just some solid goaltending, some smart moves roster-wise from David Poile, and just it is a very, very well put together team, and they outwork everybody. You have to. When you're not as talented, you have to work harder, and I'm an example of that. Shining example. So by working harder, they manage to eke out more wins than expected, and they do finish ahead of 3 teams in the standings. The New Jersey Devils, they're first in the East again. And they're out in the first round again against the Penguins. So this is a frustrating time for New Jersey. Robbie Ftorek says he did a terrible job of coaching in the playoffs. And in order to show him a vote of support, Lou Lamoriello hires Larry Robinson to be his assistant in 1999. So summer 99, they bring in Larry Robinson as an assistant. We know what's going to end up happening to Ftorek as coach of the New Jersey Devils. And we know it's going to end well for New Jersey, just they switched out coaches a lot. Islanders, can it get worse? Give me a hell yeah. 24 wins. 24. And they claim to lose $25 million. $25 million lost. The salaries have gone up, sure, but that means that their debts have gone up and their losses have gone up exponentially. Lots of money leaving and not coming back for the New York Islanders, and it is a miserable time for this team. And again, is the general manager doing a poor job? Yep, sure. But does he have a budget? Absolutely not. There was no budget for him to work with. New York Rangers, 62-point season for Gretzky. He retires. Good call by Wayne. At this point, he's notably slower than other players on the ice. He is still one of the best passers in the game. He only scores 9 goals that year. And so this is a year that they missed the playoffs. This is a great time to rebuild. Rebuild. This is the Rangers. No, they go out and sign everybody. So they bring in Theron Fleury and they bring in Lefebvre and they bring in Kamensky was brought in. They bring in any name they can. You're a guy, you want money, play hockey, you come play for us. Kirk McLean's brought in to be the backup goaltender for a team that was 18th overall. This is a team that needed a rebuild and it's just, and who wants our money? And whoever takes that money ends up joining the team. And it's a pattern they're going to repeat. The Ottawa Senators, they get 44 wins, the best they'd ever had to that point, and then they get swept in round 1 by the Buffalo Sabres. So again, it's like they look like they're on the verge of something, but they don't quite have 50-07, not yet. So the Sabres take them out in 4, and it was just Hasek was fantastic. And Ottawa's goaltending, they've never had that big name in net. They had Hasek, and then the league shut down. Wait, Hasek's with the Senators? Let's not have a league this year. And that we'll get to that. But yeah, it's a crying shame that the Ottawa Senators have never really had that big name, big game goaltender. If they had, who knows what might have happened in those numerous failures they would have against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Pittsburgh. Mario Lemieux does it again. He saves the team. So he saved the team in the 80s when they brought him in. He's a big name, sells a lot of tickets. This was a team that was in bankruptcy. Looked like they were headed for Portland. So the Portland Penguins are going to be a thing. Nope, he comes in, he rescues them from bankruptcy and from their debts. He takes over the team. And this is a team that's in the playoffs. This is a team that actually made the second round that year, and Lemieux saves them financially. So this would have been a good team, gets moved, and it would have been absolute chaos, I would think, if that had happened. But Mario Lemieux is the savior of the team. That's why I know there's some other stuff that went on with Mario Lemieux with the Pittsburgh Penguins that Penguins fans may not have liked. But you know what? In the end, he saved this team numerous times. St. Louis, they suddenly can't blame Brett Hull. Brett Hull goes to Dallas, wins the Stanley Cup. They've been blaming Brett Hull and pointing fingers at him, especially over those last few years that he's there. Now they can't. Now they have to look at the rest of the roster and go, I guess we can't get out of the second round. And they don't. They don't get out of the second round. So the St. Louis Blues, there's a lot of mediocrity that happens here, despite them having some really good players for quite a few years, and they just can't shake that jinx where they can't get ahead. They're not going to get back to the Stanley Cup Finals for a long, long time yet. Tampa, 19 wins. Remember yesterday I said that the coach said, hey, we're not the worst team in the league anymore? Yeah, you are. They finished 27th overall. They get 2 more wins than they had the year before. They scored 2.18 goals per game, which was an improvement over the 1.87, I believe it was, they had the year before, or 1.82. Dear Lord, you score less than 2 goals a game. I want to use a Letterkenny phrase. I'm not going to do it. 3.52 goals against per game. So you're not going to win much when your goals for and goals against are that different. You have that kind of deficit, you're not winning very many games at all. It's amazing they even won 19 with numbers like that. Toronto. Hey, look at Toronto. 45 wins, and they're in the conference finals. Things look great for Toronto, and there's talks about maybe they're going to win a Stanley Cup. However, there's all this underlying stuff about, yeah, but they probably overachieved, and it's probably going to get worse from here. You can't have nice things if you're the Leafs, apparently. They lose in 5 games in that conference final versus the Buffalo Sabres, versus Dominic Hasek, right? But they went from 20th overall the season before to 5th overall that year. So the excitement level in Toronto was really high. I know it's 20 years ago. And again, this is why when people say, well, the Leafs have been crap since 1967. No, they really haven't. Cujo was fantastic. It is a crying shame that Curtis Joseph didn't finish out his career with Toronto. And what I mean is that he moved around. I think him leaving and going to Detroit was one of the worst mistakes he made. And I think he would admit that was a bad move by him. It was a lot to do with money. But he was fantastic for Toronto that season and just was out goaltended by the best goaltender in the league at that point, Hasek. Vancouver, 23 wins. Four more than Tampa. And they finished below the Nashville Predators. So the Predators come in. One of the guys who was really good for Nashville was Scotty Walker. Scott Walker was picked up in the expansion draft from Vancouver, who have 14 goals in 59 games from Alexander McGillney. So when you look back at the fact that New Jersey will trade for McGillney and the Canucks don't get anything back, at the beginning it didn't look like they got anything back. Morrison turned out to be pretty darn good, but Dennis Peterson, right? And this is why he didn't have the market value to get a big name back. Good thing Morrison became that, but 14 goals in 59 games. McGillney looked disinterested many nights. This may very well be why McGillney's not in the Hall of Fame, is because later on in his career, he was remarkably inconsistent, and when he didn't feel like scoring, and Messier, 13 goals in 59 games. So between the two of them, 27 goals, and, Bure was traded during the season. So, and they had to get Dave Gagne back. Brian Burke insists on Gagne being a part of the deal. That's really important to him because he wants that big center. Jovanovski, however, that was kind of a Keenan call to get him, and then Keenan. Apparently, Burke calls Keenan like, hey, I've got this offer. What do you think? And Keenan goes, yeah, that's a good deal. All right, cool. You're fired. Not exactly, but that's to sum it up. They're 26th overall, so they are last above Tampa, and they end up walking away from the draft with the best draft picks. They draft the Sedins. Capitals, they go from finalists to out of the playoffs, and it's everything. Kolzig's play falls back to earth. Their goal scoring falls apart. Their defense doesn't look very... Everything for the Capitals that year went wrong. They fell really far in the standings really quickly, and all of the good feelings of that Stanley Cup Finals appearance in 98 disappear quickly into that 98-99 season. It is bizarre how quickly the Capitals fall off the map, but it's not as unusual for a Stanley Cup finalist to drop out of the playoffs as a Stanley Cup champion. That is a very unusual occurrence. Even in this day and age where we've got 16 out of 31 teams that make the playoffs. But there you go. So sort of a shorter season review kind of thing than my other ones. And because to me, there wasn't as much going on for me to cover. There wasn't a whole lot of controversy that year. And there you go. You're all caught up. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and now you're all caught up in the 98-99 season, which means Y2K is around the corner, and everybody better be ready for it or the world's going to explode. That was kind of the mentality. Going into 2000, there were so many apocalypse scenarios. It was fantastic. Let me know your thoughts as always. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, and I'll talk to you again soon.